What is a B Corp and why would you want to earn a certification? Our guest today is Tim Jones, otherwise known as that B Corp bloke. You know, you're into something good when people start remembering you by what you do and not your name. So it's great branding right there. So just saying, but Tim runs Grow Good, which is a B Corp agency in New Zealand and is now expanding into the US market. They've actually helped hundreds of companies gain their B Corp certification and can speak to the benefits of that, what it means to your business and your brand. And we're just really excited to have him here. I had the pleasure of meeting him and his family. They were local here visiting in San Diego, and we had a great time. And man, there's so many ways we could go in this conversation, but we're gonna primarily focus on B Corp to start with and see where it goes from there. So Tim, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Good to see you again, because it was great to meet the random guy off the internet for dinner with your husband as well. It worked out well. Yeah, we were trying to arrange a Zoom call, and I hadn't worked out that you were in San Diego when I was trying to book this. I was like, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to be there. So yeah, great.
Let's do it.
San Diegan, is that a thing? San Diegan hospitality.
I think so. Yeah, that's kind of a thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what you call a Canadian living in San Diego. Is confused, happy, grateful, relieved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm the same. I'm British by birth, half Welsh, half English with Irish heritage. Lived in Australia for a year, now living in New Zealand since 2004. So I consider myself to be a human of this planet, of this universe. And
there you go.
Currently domiciled in New Zealand. Yeah.
There you go. Exactly. Hey, before we go any further, I do love doing a shout out to the person who recommended us, or the agency in this case, Heather Campbell. She is an amazing woman. She has her own podcast, Guts, Grit, and Great Business. She also has a successful business as an attorney. And so she was actually a guest back in episode 151. That's a lot of podcasts ago. And we have been journeying since then, masterminding together and everything. And she's just an amazing person, and she connected us. So Heather, thank you. We appreciate you supporting this show and making this introduction so we can actually have this conversation. So it's
Indeed.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's talk about this B Corp designation and really why it would be necessary for companies to consider it.
Yep. So B Corp certification is a third-party independent verification of a company's purpose and social and environmental performance. And it's increasingly important because I think there's a lot of rocks being thrown at capitalism as it is. I don't have an issue with capitalism per se. I think it's when profiteering is happening over making a profit. I have no concerns with people making good profit if they're doing something good, but they're also treating people with respect and they're being considerate as to how they make their money. It's people who are profiteering that have kind of been the problem. And that's kind of really where B Corp came into being. So it was founded or launched in 2006. The guys who founded it were actually the previous owners of And1, the basketball company. And historically, they'd been focused on, we just want to sell one more pair of shoes than Nike, then we win, mic drop, fantastic. But they kind of got realizing over their journey with the organization that actually just making as much money as possible wasn't that fulfilling. And to maximize your shareholder return, which, for US-based CEOs listening, you will know the only job you have to do next quarter is make more money than you did this quarter. And to do that typically means you make shortcuts. You have to, compromise your workers' benefits, or you do something that's literally antisocial. It's against, society or the community in which you live in. And so the B Corp framework and the B Corp certification has been designed as a long-term solution to let CEOs be able to demonstrate and recognize and realize that, there's more to life than just making as much money as possible. Do it in a more considerate way. And so to get B Corp certified, you go through this independent verification process where they assess your business against 5 key areas. So your governance, your workers, your community impact, your environmental impact, and then your customer impact. And currently, to get B Corp certified, you need to score a minimum of 80 out of 200 points on this assessment program. And then, if you hit that mark and you get through the audit successfully, you get to call yourself a certified B Corporation. in terms of why it's relevant now and why people are looking at it, we're seeing huge and increasing demand from consumers, particularly if you're in a food and beverage, health and beauty sector. If you're not a B Corp in the near future, people I think will be looking at you with sort of one eyebrow raised. We're seeing increasing demand from employees. Human and humanity in general is on a search for more purpose and meaning. And I think you're going to spend 80,000 hours at life in a job on average. You want to know that the work you're doing on the day to day is having some greater impact than just making money for the people that own the company. So yeah, customers and employees. We're seeing investor pressure. So increasingly, local banks, regional banks, central banks, all the finance industry are starting to go, look, before we give you your money, we want to kind of know actually what does your business do and how do you do it, as well as, is it solvent? Are you making money? And lastly, we're seeing supply chain pressure. So some of the really big companies are now, being basically told legally you have to start reporting on your social and environmental performance. And so that's now filtering down. So if you're a medium-sized company supplying into a big company, pretty soon, if not already, they'll be coming to you saying, hey, I need to know what you're doing. How do you treat your staff? And, have you had any labor law violations? Because you're now in my supply chain and that's a risk for me. So yeah, hopefully that sums it up.
So when you were talking and sharing the criteria, and you mentioned about 80 out of 200 questions,
yep.
Is that low? Is that high? Is that, where is that? Because it seems
great.
like, yeah, that's
great question, because it's like not even half marks. So
yeah,
how hard is it? Yeah. So the median score on first attempt so if a company just walking down the street, we've just been running our business as usual, the median score on first attempt is 50 out of 200. So to even get to 80, you are significantly outperforming, business as usual. Wow. So yeah, to sneak in with an 80.1, it's like you're still doing a lot more good compared to your peers typically. Yeah.
Got it. So is that going to, and you've been doing this for a while, so I don't know if you've seen that change already, but is that going to increase as we go along, because more and more businesses are going to get this certification or be doing better? And so then it's like
yep.
the standard's going to continue to go up. I'm just I don't know.
So we're currently on version 6 of the assessment. So they launched it in 2006, currently on version 6. And each update to the assessment, they change some of the questions, because they do what's called a materiality assessment. So materiality is you sort of look at your business and consider what things that you do have a big impact on you, kind of on one axis of a graph, and then what has an impact on the rest of the world, like basically all the other stakeholders, so your employees, your community, the planet. So for example, if we were Coca-Cola, an obvious example of something that's of high importance to us is water, because we use a lot of it to make our products. But water is also really important for the rest of humanity, the planet, animals. So that would be of a real high materiality. So B Lab do this assessment on global issues and what business is doing. So really smart, pointy head people create this certification behind the scenes. So they created that system. So it has updated and changed. We've currently been on version 6 now, I think for about 3 years, give or take, 3 or 4 years. It's about to go through a really big update. So the next version of the assessment is actually moving away possibly from the score to looking at minimum requirements across now 9 areas rather than the current 5 areas. So it looks like it might get slightly harder to become a B Corp in the near future. But historically, there's never been a definite kind of ratcheting up of the standard over time. It's got different, and as they change it, it will affect different companies in different sectors in different ways. But there's typically, what we find when we work with clients to help them go through the assessment is sort of like the red competitive mist descends, and they go, well, who's got what score in our sector? Okay, right, we want to get at least 90 because we want to be better than our peers. So right. The scoring, I think, has been really useful. It's still up in the air as to whether they will keep the numbers moving forward. But yeah, mostly there's not like a yes, you have to get better, but most companies just want to get better because they see the benefit of doing the good. And they get get all the engagement, the buy-in, the stakeholder relationship increase, and they want to do more of it.
So I can see that this is something that if somebody were to, I guess what I'm saying is that you'd want to do this sooner than later, because at some point you're going to be further and further behind, I guess. And so there's an incentive there to do it now. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah. get in this year before next year, because the the level of commitment will be the same. It's just that you have to be doing it across everything. Whereas right now, you can kind of go, look, we're doing really good with our social impacts. We might be doing loads of stuff with the community. We might be hiring locally, sourcing locally. We might be absolutely nailing that. But we might have not done so well maybe on governance. So maybe we don't have, great reporting around social and environmental performance. Maybe we don't have whistleblower policies and a code of ethics. So at the minute, you can typically score really well on 2 out of 5, or kind of average across all 5, and you'll get the certification. Whereas on the new one, you're going to have to be doing okay across 9 areas. So there's just going to be more commitment. It's not necessarily possibly harder just because you've got to be doing more stuff. But not physically harder in sense of like that's unattainable to do. It's just like there's going to be a bigger to-do list.
Yeah.
Possibly.
So who is this mostly for? And who is this not for?
Yeah, great question. To be honest, we've had clients in pretty much every sector you can imagine. We've had a farm, and we've had New Zealand's first B Corp farm certify. We've worked with an insurance company. We've worked with accountants, lawyers, cosmetics companies, food brands. We're literally just starting work with a construction company. There are some sectors that cannot be a B Corp. So casinos are not allowed to be a B Corp. Cryptocurrencies are currently on the you can't be a B Corp list. I think that's mainly around they just don't understand. There's some industries that are like obvious in terms of B Lab's opinion that like they just don't cause social positive outcomes. So casinos,
you probably fail anyway.
Yeah. Whereas with some of them, I think they just go, we just don't understand enough about this industry to know where it could be causing harm. But then, so there are some sectors that can't be. But in general, what we find is if you have the desire, the mindset, the intent that you want to be a better business, and you've got it's the push-pull, either you've got some push pressure from one of those 4 groups I mentioned earlier on, or you genuinely just go, look, you know what, as a CEO of a company, I actually want to leave a bit more of a legacy. I want to think about, the impact of my business. I think that's driving people. Because on that note, the question I love to ask CEOs is, I don't know, let's pick the NASDAQ. What was the name of the company that was number 3 on the NASDAQ in May 2013?
No idea.
No idea. And even if you Googled it, I doubt you'd be able to find it that quickly. Yet our day-to-day focus is, what are the numbers? What are the numbers? What's the revenue? Are we winning the revenue game? But I think the more people connect to the idea of purpose and meaning and spirituality and thinking of greater goodness, it's like, actually, who cares? As long as the numbers are good and everyone's thriving, like no one's going to remember me for being the 10 billionth biggest business in the world. They're going to remember you. People remember you for what you did and how you did it, not how much money you had in the bank at the end of it. And I think that is the really big shift that we're seeing, is this sort of rising just general consciousness of business and recognizing that, actually, do you know what? If I maybe take a slightly lower cut as the boss, I can actually pay my team enough money that they're not having to go to a food bank or, rely on coupons to feed themselves. Like that feels good. And B Corp is kind of just that on steroids, because it lets you think about all of that stuff across those multiple areas. Yeah,
that's great. How did you get into this?
So nothing better than a good early midlife crisis to lead you somewhere. So I used to be in medical device sales. So if people have seen, it's quite a harrowing documentary on Netflix called The Bleeding Edge, which is all about the sort of corruption and malfeasance within the medical device industry. So I used to be a medical device rep selling hips and knees and then spinal instruments and implants to surgeons. And there's a lot of dodgy activity that goes on. All the major medical device companies were subpoenaed by the US Department of Justice in about, I think it was 2008, maybe, round about then, because basically they were all paying backhanders to surgeons. So they were paying them, conference fees and advisory board fees and a bunch of other, oh yeah, sure, we'll fly your wife and kids to the Champs-Elysees for a 2-week conference. Yeah, no worries, we'll make it disappear. There was also a bunch of companies who were launching products into the market knowingly too soon. So they would kind of get past the FDA regulations to sort of grandfather clause these products in, which meant that the actual new product wasn't fully tested. It was relying on testing from maybe a product 3 generations ago that was completely different, and patients were dying, on the operating table. And all of this stuff was kind of going on. And when I think, particularly as a young male, it's quite easy to sort of ignore that when the money's good and the travel's great and the compensation's fantastic. but yeah, for me, where I live here in Christchurch in New Zealand, we had a sequence of massive earthquakes in 2010, 2011. And then in 2012, my wife and I had our daughter. And over those sort of, 2 to 3 years, I had essentially what's called a subconscious awakening. And like almost overnight, I was kind of, hang on a minute, I'm working for a company that has got these values etched in stone on the wall about, patient first and community and, we're just here to fix people. But then I know that one of the surgeons who's a share owner of the company has just killed 6 people on the operating table in pursuit of launching a product to maximize the financial return. So all of a sudden, it's like none of this is adding up in my little pea brain. Like maybe it's me, maybe I'm, So yeah, I went on this massive journey of purpose and self-discovery to sort of work out, okay, well, what is the meaning of life then? If it's, because it seemed to be before that, it was just chase the money, have a good job, have a big house, get married, have a kid, get beyond that treadmill. And on that journey of discovery, I ended up leaving the medical world, started working for a firm of surveyors and engineers. And I thought, orthopedic surgeons were pretty entitled and money grabbing. And then I met commercial property developers in the rebuild of Christchurch, where it was literally like the Wild West, people just wanting to rebuild buildings as quickly as possible for maximum financial return, no consideration for, is it a warm, safe building? It's like, who cares? They're not my, it's not, I'm not working in it. It's going to be some other people that work in my building. And so I just kind of thought, well, hang on a minute. It seems to be that initially I thought it was maybe just the medical device world, but then it seemed to be quite apparent. No, actually, it's just the business world just cares about making as much money as possible. And they don't care about the external consequences to that. And that put me on a real, like, is this it? If I got another 50 years of just working for companies where they just want to make as much money as possible. And on that journey, I stumbled across B Corp and just thought, wow, this is the thing. It's, it's purpose and money. It's like they're not mutually exclusive. Do good, by doing well and make sure everyone's doing well. It's like, okay, I could get behind that. So that would have been about 2013, 2014. And then eventually late 2015, I kept telling everyone that I ever met, hey, have you heard about this B Corp thing? And they go, no, because back then there were only 2 B Corps in New Zealand. And eventually, late 2015, I actually got made redundant. I moved out of the property world into coaching and training. So I kind of knew I'd always wanted to get into that sort of arena. I was working for a small training company, got made redundant from them because they hit some tough times. And so late 2015, I thought, well, I've been telling everyone else that they should be a B Corp. I'll just start my own one. So late 2015, started my own training consulting company, and here we are.
Wow. Well, there's a lot of people, I think, that get very disenchanted with business because, like you said, profiteering, focusing too much on the profit and not on the people and, purpose and planet and all those things. And so it's unfortunate because it's not really designed for that. I mean, I think about business as creating value in the marketplace, right? It's just, it's a vehicle to create value in the marketplace, and then the marketplace pays you back for it. Great. And it's a win-win, triple win for everyone, or should be at least. So what is the biggest, coming back to this idea of this B Corp certification, what's the biggest challenge that people face companies face in actually getting certified? What do you notice across the board where it's like, ooh, that one is probably where most companies are going to have the biggest tough time?
Yep. Typically, the main one is product-based companies with their supply chain. So most product-based companies that we work with, it's kind of like, we buy all our stuff off Nicole. She's based in San Diego. I don't know where Nicole gets all her stuff from. And Nicole is buying all her stuff maybe from China and India and wherever. So a lot of product-based companies are sourcing their stuff, but they don't know what's happening in that supply chain. And again, increasingly, so we're hopefully about to start working with a client here. They were distributing into the US. Their US distributor said, hey, we're not working with you anymore because you're not a B Corp. We've picked up another brand that is a B Corp because we're getting consumer demand that they want to know what's going on with the brands that we represent. So that supply chain, your supply chain, and understanding it, that is hands down the biggest area that people just have no visibility, and increasingly people want to know. Beyond that, the 2 main other things are people just finding the time to do it, because typically most of the companies that we end up helping don't have a full-time sustainability person. It's typically been thrown to the marketing, ops, or finance person. So they don't have the time, and they don't understand sustainability, or they don't understand purpose, because it's like, well, we've just been running the business as a, just make money. And so having to transition. So that's those would be like the three main things. Yeah.
So you help them to transition, even companies that, let's say they haven't got any of these metrics in place, or, certain things. So you actually help them to identify what those things are, assess where they're at, and then help them to make the changes as well and work with them. That must take a while.
Yes and no. Like I say, most of the companies we end up working with, they have the desire to do it, and that is the biggest. If they're being forced to do it, we've got possibly one client we've had over the last few years where I was saying to them, this is an easy win. You could easily do this, and they just go, yeah, no, that's too hard. We're not. That's like, really, that's like writing a policy document, and I've got a template that you just need to copy and paste. And they're like, yeah, no, I think we're good, thanks. So the vast majority of companies that want to do it, we can actually get them through understanding the transformation within a couple of months. So we can show them, okay, this is where you're currently at. This is what you need to get to. And most of them are small little changes. It's kind of like, 1,000 paper cuts, or, that 1%, what do they call it? Marginal gains. Typically, it's not okay, we have to pause the company and work out how do we completely transition to do something differently. Most companies are doing a lot of the basic stuff okay. It's just, okay, how do we take that to the next level? It might be, okay, so you might not currently be offering any parental leave. Okay, well, what about 2 weeks? Like that's the next minimum level. Could you do that? Like, would that be a benefit to your staff? Do you think your staff would appreciate working for you more if they had extra parental leave? Yeah, they probably would. Okay, cool. Well, are you happy to do that? Yes. Okay, great. It's now policy. Tell everyone that that's a new thing. So typically there's a lot of minor gains that we can implement to help people get to the 80 mark. And it's not, and we typically advise, don't do any big transformational stuff year one. Year one, let's just get you certified and get the benefits of the certification. And then, because you currently recertify every 3 years. So let's just get you in. If you sneak in with an 80.1, doesn't matter yet. You're in. You're in the community. Then we can start working, okay, right, where are the areas now that you now recognize that you want to really look at transforming? And that's a different story than at that point.
What have you seen, like, after that first year, and that you said, like, get certified, get the benefits of that? What are those benefits that they see kind of first year, second year, and as they continue on with it?
Yep. So, I mean, anecdotally, one thing we hear from all our clients is they have people reaching out to them saying, I want to come and work for you. And they're typically good caliber candidates, because they know what B Corp is. They're aligned to the the values and the thinking behind it, and they go, yeah, aspirationally, I want to come and work for you. Globally, the data is clear that B Corps outperform financially. So there's a couple of data points on this. The most recent one was from late last year. So B Lab, as part of your certification process, you need to submit your revenue data every time you certify. So they get a snapshot of whether companies are growing or not over a 3-year time period. And so between 2019 to 2021, B Corps were more likely to be growing their revenue and their worker base compared to non-B Corps from global data that they've compared it against. And B Corps were more likely to survive the pandemic. I think 95% of B Corps continue to operate through the pandemic compared to 88% of non-B Corps. So there's massive benefits in terms of possible revenue gain, employee retention and attraction. Like I say, increasing customer interest in this, and as I said already, the finance side of it. Increasingly, banks are looking at the money that they're giving to people and going, well, hang on a minute. So what do you mean you're making vapes? Okay, well, are you selling vapes to 14-year-olds as well? Like, is that happening? Because if it is, I can't give you money anymore. So all of those things, but so those are the top 4 benefits, and quite often operational savings. Because a classic example would be, if a company looks at buildings that they're maybe leasing or operating in, if say your lights are starting to be, in need of an upgrade, but if you swap out your old school fluorescent ones for LEDs, there's going to be an operational savings cost, and there's an environmental win. So quite often, looking at the business, it's almost like just looking at your business through a different lens that you haven't really looked at it before. And by doing that, there's all these upside benefits that you're going to get.
So what's your favorite part of this? I mean, you obviously consult for companies that are different backgrounds and industries and all of that. And so what's the part that you find is the most interesting for you?
I mean, certainly just seeing all these like weird and wacky and wonderful companies and all these like some little niche industries that like I had no idea that existed, and so almost becoming a bit of a, I don't know, like you're just getting a really deep understanding of business in general. It's like it's just really interesting, and just seeing how different people approach things. But at the same time, it's almost like the similarity. It's like when you go traveling and you meet someone in some really wacky foreign country you've never been to, and you realize, oh look, they basically have a life that's just like mine. Oh, what a crazy thought! You know, they're just trying to get to the end of the day and you know have a good day. It's like, oh, yeah, that's kind of humanity. So I think it's that sort of juxtaposition of the differences within the businesses, but also the massive similarities and the same struggles and challenges that you know we're mainly working with medium business owners, and they're all struggling, you know, with similar challenges and desires and opportunities. So it's rewarding and interesting to see the differences and the similarities. But yeah, that's humanity.
So that actually brings up a good point, because you mentioned you're working with medium-sized companies. What is kind of the threshold for people where maybe they can do it themselves initially, but then they get to that point where, they don't have they're not big enough to have that sustainability person in place, but they're too big to do it themselves, let's say. Where is that?
So we find we have helped a bunch of really, really small companies over our time. Quite often they're just like, you know, I am the expert in my small business. I don't understand any of this stuff. I need some help. We do find sometimes the cost of actually the certification is prohibitive to some really small companies, because you're looking at, I think entry level, you're looking at about $2,000 a year for the certification fee. So if you're a micro sort of startup business, that can just, you know, the whole thing can be prohibitive. That being said, you can go to the B Impact Assessment, and we'll make sure that there's a link somewhere for people to go and check out. To go and have a look at the assessment is completely free. So you can go and create an account on the assessment, look at the framework, look at all the questions that you'd be audited against, and you can use that as a guide to kind of go, well, let's just have a think about how we're running our business. So that's completely free, always has been, and as far as we're aware, always will be. Really, really big businesses, they typically tend to have resource internally, and they've got sustainability teams, and they can kind of understand it, and they don't really need us. So it's that kind of medium-sized business where, you know, we've got budget, we can afford to pay to get someone in to help us who's going to make it go more quickly and efficiently. And the other thing we're really big on is team engagement. We do a kickoff session with all our clients. We've literally just finished one before I came on this call, about 100 people on various teams rooms all over the country, getting them excited and engaged about, hey, this is what B Corp's going to mean for you in the business. Come and get involved. And that's really cool. We continuously get great feedback from the CEOs. Like, that was just really cool. I can feel the buzz. Like, the team are just wanting to be involved in this, because that's probably the worst thing that anyone can do in some ways, is do it in a silo, particularly in the larger companies. You know, we've seen examples of that here, companies that have certified where I know them, and the sustainability manager has run the certification, they've got it, and then they do an all company email to say, hey, we're a B Corp, and everyone goes, were we a C Corp, and why aren't we an A Corp? And, you know, what, I've no idea what you're on about. So there's definite value in extending, even if you do it by yourself, 100% extend the project team to bring as many people into the company and bring the whole company on the journey with you is hugely critical. Yeah,
so you actually get the full benefit of it. So
that's the thing. Like, if you can engage your staff on the journey, that's more than half. That's the whole, you know, Peter Drucker, you know, look after your staff first, and, you know, then everything else will follow.
Yeah.
And then the next critical piece is communicating it externally to your customers and other stakeholders, because again, that's what people typically do really badly. So we've just launched, as part of our offer, an impact storytelling workshop, so that we can help people create a story of their journey, so that they can then go and communicate it. Because if you close the internal loop and then at least your customer loop, you know, you're guaranteed to get a return on the process.
Yeah, for sure. That's so good. Yeah, and I was thinking about that supply chain. So there's going to be a point where, like you were saying, that companies will not work with companies, and that goes down the line, right? Who won't work with companies, and at some point there's going to be the farmer and whatever, you know, that doesn't have this certification, but they're going to be so close at hand, hopefully, that they're going to know how they're actually doing business, because it'll be evident to them at that point. So it's interesting the ripple effect that it's going to have, having some kind, like a certification like this. You know, it's one thing, like women-owned businesses, there's a certification for that. That's different, right? But in this case, it's like, wow, you know, and maybe with that at some point might get to that point. But at this point, that ripple effect of, yeah, this is our standard of who we work with.
Yep.
And in order to do that, in order to work with us, you're going to need to do that. So that's interesting. Yeah. Well, and I can see how your coaching, you mentioned earlier about working with a training and coaching company. I can see how your coaching and training comes into this, how you bring that to this arena. So it's awesome. Is there anything that I didn't ask you? Because I don't know, this is you're the B Corp bloke. So is there anything I didn't ask that I should?
I don't think so. I think we covered, most of what it's all about, to be honest. I think you nailed it. Yeah.
Cool.
I think like I say, for me, it's just part of this. I feel like we're in a really interesting place for humanity, full stop. I was listening to a podcast about AI yesterday, and the more I listen to that, the more frightening it gets. Have we created a literal monster that is going to become sentient? So I think we're in a really interesting place for humanity, full stop. And with all the polarization and all the I guess the two big conflicts that are kind of going on that are polarized, like we're in this really interesting place, I feel. And it's almost like is now the time for humanity just to actually step up and go, actually, no, we have got this, because we are the only species that can be the guardians for this planet. And allegedly, although I was listening to this one podcast, they're testing with AI. They've now recognized that dolphins have a language that they can understand, that like dolphins give each other names, and then there's these two species of dolphins that meet together, and they have created a third language in which they communicate in when they go hunting together. So you kind of go, maybe Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was right. Maybe the dolphins are actually in charge, and we are slaves to not only the AI and the dolphins. But I'm kind of hopeful that humanity can actually step up and put all the BS behind us and get off this like just money at all costs. It just seems to be the thing that has driven us for the last 200 years. And it's such a small part of your life. Like you can live well, but you can also live in a way where everyone thrives. And it's such a better feeling, that just that meaning, that purpose, that contribution, that like for me, B Corp is almost a proxy for that. I'm more interested in raising the consciousness of humanity to get us to the point where we go, actually, we can have our cake and eat it. We can live well here in balance with each other, with the planet, and it's all going to be okay. And I just think that's the more interesting journey that we're on.
Yes. Well, I see like this B Corp certification as two things. You can do it out of fear or scarcity and saying, well, I have to do this because other people want this, consumers, everybody wants this, stakeholders. Or I can do this because this is the right thing to do, and it actually helps me level up, helps us level up, and is like a measurement for that. I was thinking about what you were saying earlier about, and that's a whole podcast in itself, talking about integrity and the lack of integrity in business. But this is what you're actually talking about, integrity by choice. So as humanity, right, we get to decide, are we going to live by integrity by choice and to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do versus because we get paid more, or it's going to hit our bottom line, and so that's really the question, isn't it now?
Yep.
Yeah.
There was a couple of great stats on that. It was in like the high 60%. This was a survey that was done here in New Zealand, but I think it was about 63 or 66% of consumers said that they didn't believe the way companies were acting was in alignment with how they said they were intending to act around their social and environmental commitments. So, trust in government is at an all-time low. Trust in big business is pretty low. It's like it's never actually been easier to step up and just be good, and I mean that not from a sense of like doing good, but actually just being good, like being, as in like being better than average. I don't think it's actually ever been easier right now to just be good at what you do, but like I say, do it with integrity, do it with some meaning. It's like it's frighteningly easy to actually do it, but you just got to lift your head up and get out of the day to day and the convention of, let's just make as much money as possible. He who has the most toys wins, that famous No Fear t-shirt from the late or mid 90s. That just sums up, I think, how we're kind of operating currently. And it's like, well, yes, if you end up with everything on a little island by yourself, you actually have nothing. So
yeah, you may have a nice view, but you're not going to be sharing it with anybody. Besides the fact that there's no U-Hauls behind the hearse, and you're not going to take any of it with you and all that.
I love it. No U-Hauls behind the hearse. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
So this is so good. Tim, thank you so much. I love your passion for this, and and the higher purpose of it's not just about the certification, that it's really about helping people to do good, to be good, and to use your website to grow good. So
that's why we named it.
Good name. So we'll make sure that's in.
It was all my wife.
It was all your wife. Yes. Well,
she came up with the name.
Yeah. Having met her, I'm like, oh, okay. So
she's the brains behind the outfit.
Yeah, I was going to say she's got some brains there to bring to the table. Yeah, 100%. She's a sharp lady. So behind every successful man is a very smart and successful woman, and 100%. Surprised in-laws, they say. But have you ever heard of that?
I've not heard that before.
I don't know. Somebody
I'm taking that one.
Yeah. I'm sure they think you're awesome. So, but we'll make sure that is in the show notes, growgood.co. And you mentioned earlier about another link to the information. Yep. So we'll make sure to send that over to me. We've
got an ebook, which has got like all the stuff around B Corp. So we'll give you a link for that as well. So you'll be fully armed and ready to go.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you, Tim. So appreciate you. And this was fun. And I hope that our listeners take some action. I always say leaders of transformation, take action. Take action on something that you heard today. Get the ebook, get the information, even if you're just kind of like putting your toe in the water and checking it out. Find out what it means to be a B Corp, and then take that next step, which is looking at certification. What would it take for you to get certified? And if you're going to get certified and go through that process, well, for heaven's sakes, don't try to do it alone, because there's a lot of things, a lot of elements to it that may take some work. So reach out to Tim and his organization. They can help you through it, get you through it faster and more effectively, and set you up for success going forward, whatever that looks like to you. So we encourage you to do that. We'd love to hear your stories. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com, reach out to us there. Comment below if you're watching this on YouTube. Send us a message on social media. We'd love to hear from you and hear how this has impacted you. So again, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week on another episode of the Leaders of Transformation.